Hi everyone, welcome back into the studio. Well, we're going to do that promised lesson that I said about the snowy owl, painting the snowy owl. Matter of fact, this is the photo that we're going to use. And I have him all drawn up here on a really big piece. Okay, it's like 32 inches. I wanted to do like a 3/4 scale of him. They're a big bird. I wanted to do like a 3/4 scale of him. And so I really wanted some power. And we're going to use all the tools that we have as an artist to create the form, the depth, the interest to the painting, tell a good story of this particular snowy owl. So we're going to be using textures. I'm going to show you some of those techniques. But before we begin, I'm going to start out with this video. I'm going to break the painting of this snowy owl into 2 videos. And this video that we're going to do today is going to describe our colors. If you understand the colors, you can paint him. Okay, and whites are dangerous colors to work with because the artist can destroy a painting really quick by getting too much white. You know, most of us have done that, got too much white in there. You lose your depth, your interest. And so I'm going to describe to you about the whites. And we've got to create warm and cool colors. And warm and cool colors was one of the things that was so difficult for me to understand when I first started painting almost 40 years ago. Matter of fact, this year will be, it's over 40 years ago, but 40 years since I started teaching it. And so I want to explain that to you, okay? I want everyone to be successful here. Now, I know on YouTube, these kinds of classes don't go over well because everyone wants to jump right in immediately and get to painting. And that's fine, and I do understand that. But I want to have a high success rate with this. And so I want to make sure we do it right. So please study this just a little bit. Just watch this video all the way through before we go paint the snowy owl, and you will have a very, very beautiful painting when we're all finished, okay? All right, so let's explain to you. One of the most important things is to understand temperature, especially, well, we're painting summer, winter, all those kinds of colors. We have to understand temperature. Temperature is so hard to understand. And in my online color theory course, I have a huge online color theory course that I've been teaching color theory since I started teaching it in 1983. And a list, just a quick little bit about my history, okay? Well, after I finished school and stuff, I became a paint chemist. I built paint systems and matter of fact, I was a paint chemist before I was an artist. And so I knew paint systems, building them, how to build some of those colors. I never really understood how warm and cool colors, play in together, but I understood how to make them, okay? And then as I became an artist, I understood that. In all the books, and I've written over 70 books, and this is a real big book here on painting gardens of birds, and it has just step photos by step photos and how you paint, how you do the techniques and stuff. But always in all of my books, up towards the front of the books, you will see, after we get through all these birds, I paint a lot of birds in this one, techniques. Adjusting brightness, intensity, tonal colors, tonal qualities of color and everything, because this is what is so important. But one of the things I break off is to the temperature of your colors. Knowing what your colors are as far as warm and cool colors. Because we always say, well, a general terms when I first learned things. Warm colors advance, cool colors recede. Maybe some of you have heard that. That's not true. Okay, it all depends upon your background. Okay, in a sunset, those colors are very, very warm and they are advancing through, but they're at the back of the design, and cool colors are up into the front. So there's a lot of different relationships, a lot of different things that can affect whether a color appears warm or cool, and that's what gets it so confusing. For example, okay. One of the first things, and I was absolutely blown away by this when I first read it, and I challenge everyone to go do this. We have several different blues when we make a color, okay? And everyone always says blue is cool. That's not true. Chemically, it is not true, okay? Visually, it can be, and that's where it depends. And this is what gets you all confused. And I'm going to clarify that, okay? All right. So here I have two major painting blues that artists used to get. There's other ones, cerulean blue and so on, as cobalt blue and others. But these are two major painting blues, ultramarine blue and phthalo blue. Now, as artists, as chemists, I don't know if you can see this, and it's just kind of really close. We classify it by this number that's underneath here, and that's why we put them on our tubes. Everything we do, we put them on our tubes, because as chemists and artists, we talk numbers. This is PB29. This is PB15:3. Okay, so this particular ultramarine blue is the same pigment that you're going to find in Winsor Newton ultramarine blue, if they both have this PB29, and they do. It's exactly the same pigment. We make our colors from powdered pigments, okay? So we use these colors that are in here are exactly the same, okay? It's the media, the oil, the acrylic that makes it different, but the colors are exactly the same because we're using the same pigment to make it. I know, I've made them, okay? So we use the same pigment here. So ultramarine blue, and I hear so many times, so many artists out there that when they go to mix something or put it in the sky, cool it down with a little bit of blue. That's not true. It can be, but it's really kind of an incorrect statement, and I made it for a long time. Ultramarine blue, PB29, is warm, okay? And if you don't believe me, Google that. Go out there, type in ultramarine blue PB29 and ask if it's warm or cool. And every single one from Winsor Newton to everyone else will say warm. This is a warm pigment. But visually, we see it as a cool pigment. And how can we see something as a cool pigment? It's because the majority of the other colors we use are warmer, which will make this cooler. Okay, now some of you are a little bit confused, and that's where the confusion starts. It starts right there. How can I make this appear warmer, or how can I make this appear cooler? You do that by other colors around it, okay? For example, let me just show you this, okay? Let's come down here to palette. And I have out my standard palette that we're going to paint the snowy owl with. But if I take out here 3 little cups, okay, and let's just say I put water inside of these cups, okay, but let's just say on this particular one here, I put in cool water, and this particular one I put in warm water, and this particular one I put in hot water, okay? So when I put them all together, you'll say this one's hot, this one's cold, this one's warm. Okay. Now, if I take this away, you'll say, okay, this one is warmer than this one, obviously. Okay, the cool is warmer than here. And if I put this one in here like this one is warm, this one is cool, this one's warmer than that one's obvious. Okay, but what about if I do this? Now, this one is cooler than this one. And I can make it appear warmer if I use this color. Does that make sense? It's relative to it. It's visually relative. And this is why in so many classes I tell you it's a visual thing. And if you want to make this object advance and appear to really come forward and warmer, we need to put in a cool color to make it appear warmer. Okay? And in color, like in all of my in my books and stuff like that I do with the temperature of color, I printed off this page. What we put down in colors is onto a scale. So a cool color here is really, on this particular palette, the red violet here is very cool. On this particular palette, the phthalo blue is a neutral temperature pigment. Ultramarine blue and phthalo blue. If I was to look at these two and look at these two together, ultramarine blue is a reddish blue. It's a red, it's a warmer reddish blue. And so it is warmer than phthalo blue. Phthalo blue is a neutral. So if I had my 3 cups of water and stuff out through here, ultramarine blue would be heading right about in here. Phthalo blue would be heading right about in here. So phthalo blue is still a neutral, it's right in the middle, but it's slightly cooler if you put these two out together. It is cooler than ultramarine blue. And so this is one reason why you see me so many times in so many paintings. I go to phthalo blue rather than ultramarine blue. Because ultramarine blue, I love the color and I will use it for variation stuff. But a lot of times it's a little too warm for me into the painting for getting the depth I want to use. I use a blue, the phthalo blue, that I can cool really easy and I can warm really easy. And I use it to make my grays and stuff like that. And we're going to do that in just a minute, okay? So you have this variation. And so when you're studying color theory and you're studying all this stuff, you're going to, put colors in here. Like when I look at these colors. So what I do is, and I use a very simplified palette. I know out there on this palette, this is the warmest color that I have on this palette. This is the next warmest color that I have on this palette. These two actually are really, really close. But if I was looking at colors instead of neutrals, we classify this as neutrals. And so what I do is basically I group these as warm colors. And inside these warm colors that I have here, I have my warmest two colors that I know. I can make my warmest orange from these two colors. Hansa Yellow, even though it's bright, it's a yellow that sits a little closer. It sits right on the line between neutral and warm. So it is just a little bit warm. It is lukewarm, if you want to say, okay? And so, but yellow oxide is really warm. It's one of the warmest ones out there, okay? And then over here, these are my last warmest colors. It's not quite as warm, heading to my neutrals, heading to my cools. So that's how I put out my palette all the time. People always wonder how I put out my palette. This is why I put it out, because I am a temperature painter. I paint temperature. And I have figured out over the 40 years that temperature is one of the most important elements to create harmony, beauty, interest within the painting is through temperature, because we see temperature every single day. And so that's why I add so much of it, okay? So when we go do this snowy owl, here comes the problems, guys. We're going to go do this snowy owl here. And he's white, but he's not white. He has all kinds of different temperatures to it. And as we go to paint him, we have to be able to pick apart the whites that are warm and the whites that are cool. And how are we going to make those colors? And that's what's going to be very important. In some of the other lessons, landscape lessons and stuff, I've showed you this picture. I go out when it's winter out here and I take thousands of pictures because they help me see warm and cool, even on a winter's day. And I took this picture of the snow right out here by the prairie. And you can see where the shadow is, and you can see where the light is hitting it. And then I pull it out using a photo spectrometer, which is inside of Photoshop. I pull the color out and put a block of it so you can see what that color is. And you can see here in the light of the snow, that is that color. It is a yellow white. It is a yellow white. And it's warm. So the snow right there is warm, okay? Over here, in this deepest shadow that you see over here, here is the color. It is actually a blue. It is a color that's blue. And so I make these out. These are value scales of warm and cool colors here. Now, this one right here, when I hold up the blue, the difference between this blue and the blue that I have here, the bluish color that I have here, is the one that's on the photo has just a touch more violet in it. But violet is one of the coolest colors. So I make all different kinds of value scales to help me see where those colors are. And you can see that number 9. See that number 9 over there on the yellow scale right here? That is a warm. These are neutrals. This is a warm. These two are cool. And that number 9 is that color that's right up over there. And that's how it works. That's how it visually works. So I know if I want to take white and I want to create a warm white, one of the quickest, easiest ways. As a matter of fact, years ago, back in 1983, I made this extremely popular color. It was called warm white. And it's so popular. And all I did was took some PW6, which is titanium white, and a little bit of yellow oxide here, and a little bit of green from my palette here. Let's do that again here. But that and a little bit of the yellow oxide. And I created this really, really warm kind of yellow here, yellow white, really light, warm yellow white. Very, very, very popular. And you can even see it on the palette here. It is really, really warm. And so this color, let's put it up over here. This color is really, really warm. And so you'll see, hopefully you can see a little bit on the camera. You can see the yellow in it, okay? Can you see the kind of, looking at it at white, you can see the yellow on it. And if you can't see it, if your monitor and stuff is off a little bit in the camera, it's really difficult to pick up subtle differences. Just do this. Do this simple exercise that I'm doing here, and you will train your eye to see color, okay? Just take a few minutes and do this so you can teach your eye how to see this stuff, okay? So you do that. But guys, look over here. Look right into there. Do you see that? Actually, we could add a touch more yellow to this here as we work out into this particular color. And let me just grab this right here, okay? So this would be it, maybe a little bit warmer. So you see, it's just a tiny, tiny bit. But let's take a bit of that. Let's put this over here on this and that little bit of green there. Okay, so we'll put that right over there, and you look right over there. Do you see that in that owl? Do you see that color right there? It's not that color there. Look at the difference. Look at the difference between the warm and the cool. Do you see that? Right there. Look at it right down here. This is the area that's going to give us that we have to have absolutely perfect as far as temperature when we paint this owl. Can you see it? It's blue. And here, what do you see here? It is yellow. And this is the greatest area of depth in the owl is right here. And it is this yellow, this warmer yellow color right there coming up against, what do you see down there? See, if I put that white to it, if I put white, you can really see it blue, right? So what is that particular color there? Well, we're going to head over to the cooler scale over here. So so we know how to make a warm color. And warm grays can come from anything. And you see me in my florals all the time do this, green and burnt sienna. And I use this to make beautiful grays. And these are warm because these two colors are warm. Is it as warm as I could make? No, I could add this and make it even warmer. But when I paint, let's just go over and grab this for a second. This is a lesson that's on my YouTube channel, okay? And it is such an important lesson. And I didn't go into depth like I'm going to on this snowy owl. And because it's I should have done this before. So you can, those of you that haven't painted this yet, could go back and paint this. But look at this, see this beautiful warm color. This is what I use to paint white roses all the time, okay? And so I'm gonna get the value here a little closer. So I add this a little bit more white right here. And let's take this color for a second. Let's put it out here on this. And we come in here and we look at that rose. Look at the base of that rose. That's the base of that rose. Is this beautiful warm gray that's coming from burnt sienna and green. Now, why do I use burnt sienna and green? Because I have green and I have burnt sienna as a majority of my painting. This causes a harmony between my rose and my other colors that I am using. And so I'm a big advocate of this. Your whites, the colors you use to generate your white colors in your paintings, your different values, lights and darks of your whites, your warm and cools, should come from other areas of the painting, because that will create the harmony. So in the picture of our snowy owl that we're due here, we're going to have all these blues, we're going to have some of these burnt siennas and some of these yellows, and we're going to pull the colors of the owl from our background. That's what artists do, okay? And so, because If we don't, then our owl will be unrelated to our background. So those are decisions that artists make. But so here, once I start my background here, I then take my either warms or my cools, whatever colors I use into the backgrounds, and I make my gray tones. And those mid-value tones are what sets the tone for the starting of the rose. And then as I advance the rose up here, I head more to a yellow-white up in through here into the front, warmer colors. And as I go to the back, I go to the cooler colors. Well, you're going to see here some of the greens because the green, a color with a little bit more green, this is warmer than this. So as you see me head a little bit green here, that is cooler than the color that I use here. And it's deepening down. It's getting cooler. Do you see the blue in here? Do you see the bluish color in here? Okay. Now, look at the difference between this warm right here and this cool right here. See the difference? The warm and the cool here. You see the bluish tone. You see the more yellow, warmer tan tones. Look at the owl here. You see the warmer yellow tone. You see the cooler bluish tone. It is the same type of thing that goes on in this rose. Do you see that? Do you look right down through there? Do you see those colors that you see right down through here? It works. It works. And one of the reasons why I stress to everyone here, paint a Western, okay? Paint a landscape. You want to paint beautiful roses? How did my roses get so pretty? I studied Westerns. I studied those tones, those evening paintings, sunsets, evening paintings, stuff like this. I learned how to see color. Once I see color, then I know how to make a beautiful rose. I know how to play the warms and cools through the rose and make beautiful white colored roses. Let's look at that cool color that's here. Okay, so right down in here. So we know we can make a cool color. So here's a nice warm color. So all I have to do is if I even want to make, so I make this warm and, from, let's say, green and burnt sienna, okay? And so I have this warm. Matter of fact, let's leave it a little bit more burnt sienna here. You'll definitely see this color is going to appear warmer than this color here because burnt sienna is warmer. I know that as a fact. Burnt sienna is warmer. And so this is going to appear grayer, cooler than what this one does here. But I can change that back by adding the blue. I'm going to add a little bit of blue in here, okay? And I'm going to create this cooler now, bluer tone. Now, see how it changes? This color appears cooler than this color. This color now all of a sudden appears warmer. This is those 3 cups of water thing, and this is what gets everyone so confused. Here. Now, I added this blue, and why? Because the blue here, is it a cool color or a warm color? It's a neutral color, okay? It's a neutral color, but it is cooler than the burnt sienna and the green. Does that make sense? It is cooler. So if we look at our scale that I had here, if we look at our scale that I put here, okay, it is a neutral, okay, and our green, the green sits right about here, and of course the burnt sienna would be up here into the solid warms. And so if you look off of that scale, so now all of a sudden I put this, and this looks really cool. But now look at this, okay? Let's just take this color, and it's not exact. We're just close. We're close, but we're gonna get exact on this owl. We're going to get exact. And so I put those 2 colors there. You can see one is warm, one appears cool. And it's shifting slightly blue. And this is the thing that most artists get into. They say, okay, this is why blues look cooler. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Blues can look warmer, okay? Go to your paint store, and you'll see in all those chips, you'll see warm blues and cool blues. But in most paintings, the eye will start to see the blue is cooler because we have other colors in there that are warmer. and it will push blue looking cool. So now when you look at this rose, you can see the warm center part of the rose here, and especially if I don't get paint on this one. Let's try not to do this. I love this painting, so I'm not going to screw it up. And then you can see it get cooler down over here. Can you see that? You can see those cooler colors. Look back here. The cooler colors into the back of the rose. Do you see it right back there? The back colors over here. And I tend to neutralize and cool off my colors as I go back into my painting here. Now, but that's not the coolest color. The coolest color we can make on this palette is here. That's the coolest. That color is even cooler than this blue. So I have this blue, but I can make this color blue even cooler yet, which will force the blue slightly warmer. I know that doesn't make sense, but it's visual. Remember, one color affects the color. Remember how I just changed this color? I made this color, originally look cooler. So let me do that again. Let me just set that up here. So if I take some white, even if I use a little burnt sienna, then let's use a little bit of our nice warm yellow here. And I create this color here of these two here, okay? This is definitely warmer, and I cover up this. This is warmer than that one. This is still appears a little warm, but it's warm. But the second I put this out here, this is cooler, right? And so I have this particular color here. Then how do I get this even cooler yet? I reach over to one of the coolest colors on my painting palette, which is the red violet. And I add just the tiniest little bit of this red violet to this particular color, and this will cool it. Now see how it is cooler yet in color. I don't want to lose the gray here and make this a violet. A lot of times, well, we're just going to head that way a little bit. A lot of times, I'll just take some of this and just push this back in here. But this gray here, leaning more violet, goes more cool here. It's one of the coolest colors that I have here on this particular painting. So when I take this color here and I push this over here as a cooler, it's even more cool, and that's the color that I'm going to get down over here. Do you see that? That's the color that I use over here. And you'll usually see this color appear into the outer edges of something that I'm painting. You'll see it right down here. See it on the bottom side of that rose. So basically what I'm doing when I'm painting whites is I'm painting from warm colors down to cool colors here. And so when we take this bluish kind of color here, let's look over for a second. We'll put this one away here. We'll lean over there, okay? Let's look over and let's find this color. This is not going to be the correct color because it's actually cooler than what I have here. So what I want to do here is I'm going to, when you look at this right here, you'll see when you look at this color compared to this one right here, you'll see that that one on the owl there is even cooler yet. So let's find that. So right into here, so it's cooler yet. So we know it's going more of a blue and a little bit of violet. It's actually in a little bit of this violet. Let's head this way. And how I usually, when I go to find those colors, I know that this blue and this violet here is some of the coolest colors. It's the purple. Some of the coolest colors we have in our painting today, okay? And what we're going to do on this owl. These are some of the coolest colors. As a matter of fact, this is really, really close to it. And you can see this, and I'll lighten this up so we can get a value of it here. This is ice. This is iced tea here. This is cool color. And I can vary this even cooler by adding a touch more of the violet to it. But let's just see where we are, okay? So we were here kind of greenish. Let's put this out here, right out onto here. Might have to lighten that up just a bit to hit that. Okay, but let's do that. Let's lighten that up, okay? So there's a warm and there's a cool. This one's very cool. This one's very warm. This was some of our early warm. And let's just see where we are. That will probably dry down right to where that is, right there. Do you see that bluish color right there? And so we can darken it just a bit here so you can see it a little bit easier. And that's the whole thing, guys. That's the whole secret to everything, is you got to train your eye to see these tonal qualities. So that's going to get closer to it. As you can see, look right down into that. You see that there? So we'll go right over here to our yellows. Do you see that? And right over here to that. And that area of the, that's that area of the snowy owl. It, you know, you look at it, you break it away, you look at the owl and you go, oh, he's a pretty white owl, right? And he's not. He is blue and yellow and violet and some burnt sienna and greens. He's a variation of these tones. I mean, look at this tone right in here, okay? How would you make that tone? I know how I'd make it. I would pull my burnt sienna color that I'm going to have out here and any kind of blue or greenish kind of color that I have out there. Look at that. Look at that warmer tone there. It's just a little bit lighter. If I took this burnt sienna green that I made here earlier, let's just take some of that and get rid of that blue. Tiniest little bit of a color is going to make a difference here on your temperature. When you start painting, I call this painting the majors. You start painting up here at the majors, you know, that your tiniest little bits you put into your color is going to change it, change its temperature. A little closer. Could have it's a little tiny closer. You see that right in that area there? Look right there. And you see, once you see that, then you can see, look at this tone as it climbs up here towards his back. It's going to go a little bit more blue. See, that's too warm for that receding. See how it changes? See how that's just down here in the sunlight, that works pretty good. Up here, it's not. It's going to need to cool. It's going to need, so I take that color, it's going to need a tiny bit of blue and to go a little bit darker here to see that. And we'll put that right on there. You can see it goes a tiny bit cooler, tiny bit darker. Let's get that a little closer here to this, to that edge. And you can get that, there's the edge. Do you see that? That's the edge right there. So that color is right there on him. That color is also right in there, pretty close, a little darker, but it's right there. And then down here, it's this warmer tone in the center. You'll find this tone maybe right down in there. You don't find this tone. You can see that's a cooler tone, cooler shadow. You'll see a blend of the two right up in here. Look in this part of the wing. You'll see the gray and the warm right up in there. You see a little warm there and the gray or cool. Do you see that? Do you see those changes right up in there? Do you see? This is going to be a fun area to paint on him. But down over here, you're going to see these colors here. See? You're going to see those colors. A little darker on the blue. You're going to see those colors. And so this is one of the things I want to show you. This is the stuff that I love to teach, is how to see these colors. And we're going to paint this snowy owl. And to get this snowy owl beautiful. And I've always wanted to paint one with everyone. And this year, this winter, they don't normally come down to the Midwest like they did this year. There was one out at the farm sitting out in a tree. Shocked the heck out of me as he took off. Beautiful bird. And I said, that's a sign that I need to paint the snowy owl. And so I'm going to paint this guy. But I want to paint him with you guys really big, about 3/4 scale of him. And he's quite a bit bigger than this, actually. And I want to get the colors, the tones, and we're going to concentrate on that. We're going to concentrate on the textures and everything else. But we're going to concentrate on how to find those colors from the same colors we use every single day. And this is all part of color theory, knowing your palette, knowing what is warm, knowing what is cool, how to make those grays, how to make those warmer grays, cooler grays, being able to read the painting of what you see. You know, just look at his body here. You see warm tones right through here, cool tones right through here, cooler tones, a mixture of those tones. Look at how this wing right here starts out really yellow white, highlight white, down to cooler colors right down through here. We are going to learn how to see. We are going to learn how to make those colors right from this particular palette. And we're going to have a whole heck of a lot of fun, because one of the things I'm going to do with this whole thing, I'll kind of lead this up as we start the painting. So one of the things that I'm going to do with this is we're also going to be painting the textures. And we're gonna use the rules of texture and the brush marks and the calligraphy to advance areas and then recede areas. And we're gonna use what's called soft focus. This is a soft focus background. And then we're gonna bring sharp detail into him and cause him to really advance, okay? It's gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna be a lot of fun. But in all of this stuff, guys, and I know everyone wants to this loves to jump in and paint. I'm a big advocate of color theory. I've taught it around the world. I've taught it in 29 different countries and universities around the world. It is one of the things that makes me an artist is color theory, and I have online courses for that. But I put it in every book and stuff that I write, and because it is that important. And I started out my career, and I'll show you this. There is. I started my entire career as a chemist, as a paint chemist, building colors. And so we did photospectrometer and analysis of colors, and we would read it, but we go off of the chemical index name. And this is a book, and this is an old version of it. Okay, this is the Artist Handbook of Materials and Techniques, and Ralph Mayer, the artist and writer and chemist that wrote this book. This is basically the chemist's guidebook to materials and techniques. This particular book, this is an old one. I have the new one, the new revised version of it is much, much bigger. This one was written in 1948 here. And it's one of my collector's ones that I do. And it's about, total here about 550 pages. It's up over 800 pages today. There's 300 pages of new materials. So the new version of it is quite a bit bigger. But the Artist Handbook of Materials and Technique is like the Bible to artists that tell them all about materials, techniques, colors, how certain chemicals interact with each other, and this was a book that I've used my entire life. Of course, I have the new versions of it. I have all 5 editions of it. But I looked around until I could collect a 1948 edition of it as well, because I just really because I can see where it's changed. Because back in 1948, we didn't have the acrylics that we have today that have totally changed everything. But this drives you to teach color theory. You want to know about PY42, which is the chemical index name for yellow oxide. How is yellow oxide, PY42, different from yellow ochre, PY43? And as an artist, I wanted to know that. And I know as a chemist what's the difference, but as an artist, I wanted to know what's the difference between those two, and how do they react? If I mix them with an ultramarine blue, a PB29, how are they different? And that's the kind of stuff that I wanted to know about. And so I learned about that. And so when you look at my limited palette here, which I try to teach you guys here on YouTube about the limited palette, here I know how to chemically build every single one of these colors. And I know their temperatures, their values. Another important thing is their tinting strength. This is all color theory. The tinting strength, the strength of a pigment. Okay, what does that mean? The tinting strength of a pigment is how let's put it this way, is how it will maintain its identity when mixed with another color. Okay, phthalo blue is extremely strong, whereas ultramarine blue, beautiful reddish blue. What's the difference between it? This is a green leaning blue. This is a red leaning blue. This one is very, very strong. Ultramarine blue is very, very weak under a mix. Okay? And because ultramarine blue has ultramarine blue has red in it, it makes really, really grayed greens. So you look at this, and this is just all part of this is color theory, guys. This is, so many times, and I try to help so many people with art, with understanding art. And because it can be frustrating and they think, oh, I can't do this. Oh, yes, you can. But you haven't taken the right pathway on your journey, because you don't know, those without that right answer, you get frustrated, okay? And so they think, well, I'm trying to make this green. Well, I'm going to use, they look very close together, ultramarine blue and phthalo blue. And you're going to make a green. And I say, and you know, you're painting along with me and I'm using phthalo blue, but you don't have phthalo blue, you have ultramarine blue. And you say, well, it's blue. And they look very close together, I'm going to make the same green. Will they? Let's take a look at this. So I take the ultramarine blue and I add let's add some yellow oxide to it here. Or excuse me, some Hansa Yellow into it here. And let's make a green. Okay. Well, this green, I mean, it's a nice green. It's not a pretty green. I mean, it is a pretty green. It's all green. But this we would consider a grade green, even though you look at it and go, wow, that's pretty great, until you make another green. And this took a lot of blue. This is going to take a little bit of blue because the tinting strength, I know, on phthalo blue is much higher than it is on ultramarine blue. It will take a lot of yellow here to make this green here, because phthalo blue is much powerful. So you saw me take quite a bit of green. Now that's a green. And if I want this to be a little more blue, I can just add a little bit. See, it doesn't take much. I can add a little bit of the blue and really start taking this down even more so to here. But that's a bright green. Now when you look at this, you'd say this is a grade green. Well, what caused this? Let's put a little more yellow in this. What caused this here, okay? What causes this to go more grade? You see it looking more grade. And I gave you the answer. I gave you the answer. Ultramarine blue is a red blue, right? And phthalo blue is a green blue. So it's going to make fantastic greens, but it's going to make horrible violets unless you use a really powerful violet. But so if I want to get closer to this, all I have to do is add probably a little bit of red and a little bit more yellow because it's a powerful blue. But if I add that reddish color to it here and then the yellow color back to it here, I will get closer to the grade green here as I get close, as I add the red, because ultramarine blue has red in it, and it has a warm red in it, which is a warm red very similar to that one there. So as I add the red and yellow to this, I make this color a lot closer to what that color is there. And I know that because I know ultramarine blue is a red blue, phthalo blue is a green blue. And so I know how to change ultramarine blue to react more like phthalo blue and phthalo blue to react more like ultramarine blue. That's how you do it. But that's all color theory and studying the pigments. And we're not talking about a ton of colors. If you learn basically the chemical index name, the tinting strength, and where it actually sits, a color, of 20 colors, you can paint anything the rest of your life. That's just the way to look. We'll look at it this way. And what I always tell everybody in my color theory classes, this photo that we're going to paint from here, I printed out on my laser printer in there, right? That laser printer in there has 4 colors of ink. And that laser printer prints everything in the world from 4 colors of ink. But they change a little bit, okay? So I know the difference. It's blue, but I know the difference between these blues. This one has a little bit of warmer red in it, okay? And if I want this to cool down, then I'll add my cool colors. If I want this to gray, if I want this to really gray, I'm going to add a warmer red to it. And you see me paint that in landscapes all the time. I paint rocks with Naphthol Red Light and Phthalo Blue. And why? Because my Phthalo Blue and that Naphthol Red Light are almost complements to each other and give me a nice gray. But all of that, I don't want to confuse you guys all. I just love teaching this, guys, because this kind of knowledge is what takes you to that next level as an artist. And it's not hard. It's not a tremendous amount of work. But it's one reason why here on the channel I teach you portraits, because flesh tones, those warm, cools, grayed flesh tones, they have to be absolutely perfect to make that nose advance, to make this ear recede. And I studied different artists and their techniques and the way they did that. Okay? But what those portrait tones teach you is subtle changes in the color. That's going to cause something to advance and cause something to recede, to see those temperatures into it. And so as an artist, I added portraits to my genre that I paint so I can train, so I can drill my eye down to see more detailed differences between those tones. And painting the snowy owl, the key, now when you look at this now after everything we've done. Do you see more yellow here? Do you see more bluish here? Do you see more blue here? And your eye, what happens to your eye, guys, is your eye starts to see that. It starts to see those changes. You're training your eye. So we're now going to go over and we're going to paint the snowy owl. And we're going to use the colors that we're going to find here on this snowy owl. I'll get rid of some of these right here. And so we don't confuse. We're going to use a bunch of different techniques and fun things. And in all things, we're going to take our time and we're going to learn some color theory along the way. Because color theory is the key. And it's and one of the things that's going to make him great is not only our textures and our technique, our calligraphy, but the colors. We have to get that correct, okay? So it'll be a lot of fun. So, and I really want everybody, just do a little bit of this practice before we go paint the owl, okay? Because here's the thing, here's my warning on the owl. The slightest little bit of white. White is one of the most opaque colors we have in the painting line. And it will take out everything that you do with a tone faster than any other color, okay? So we want to make sure we get our tones absolutely correct. So do some of this little mixing exercise here so you can start seeing what the whites are. And we have all of these scales over in the video links down below, and I'll put the link to everything that I'm using here. And I'll put the link in the video description down below so you can see exactly the colors that I'm using here. And you can go over on the link and click and you can get all these value scales. Get those, print those out, and then I'll put the reference photos and stuff up into the membership area and everything. And find yourself a board. You can do any other size. Those in the members, what I'll do is I'll put basically a copy of my line drawing here that we can use when we go to paint him. And then I'm going to put him up also on the big monitor. My big monitor there, I'll move it back there so you can see that back behind, because on the big monitor you're going to be able to see more tones. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Okay? It's going to be a lot of fun. And you know, and we're going to slow down, guys, and I'm going to teach you some theory, because some of you wrote me some really nice things, really nice comments on the last video I put on that rose talking about tone, and I showed you how to drop a tone back, and that's what gave me those wonderful comments are what told me maybe I need to do the snowy owl with you to really teach you about the tones of whites and those grays and those warms and cools, because some of you, I feel one lady wrote, I've been studying art for 20 years, in that one video, I learned more in that one video than I did in studying art for 20 years. There are pathways. And I had the advantage of starting out as a paint chemist. I've worked for 4 paint manufacturers, working, and I have my own paint company, and manufacturing oils and acrylics. And we use the same darn pigments. People always say, well, this is better than this. And I was just like, yeah, okay. No, not really. But, that's okay. And that's the thing. And that's what gets so confusing about it. And that's why, I understand it completely. Blue can be appear warm or cool in your painting, depend on what else is with it. Okay? You put it with some of that yellow oxide, and that blue is going to be cool. You put it with some red violet, and that blue's going to be warm. It's the craziest thing in the world, but it works. Colors affect colors. A warm glass of water is going to feel cold next to a cooler, not cold, but cooler than a hot cup of water. And iced tea is always going to feel cool against warm water, and it's going to feel ice cold against hot water. That's how it all works, okay? All right. So you may have to watch this video a couple of times, and the world of color is so amazing, guys. It is absolutely so amazing. And there are pathways, and I see so much frustration from you, but there are pathways to learn it, okay? And I love teaching it. And I love the questions you ask me, because that causes me to think, well, why does that happen? Okay, as a chemist, why does that happen? You know, and it causes me to think through it. But we're going to have a lot of fun, and let's do it together. The video may not be too popular because I didn't jump right into painting and all that kind of stuff, but I don't care. I want you guys to know the correct pathway, okay? All right, I'll see you over on the Snowy Owl. And you may have to watch this a couple times, do those exercises, and I'll see you there.